There are some films that are obviously satires. Take Dr. Strangelove. There's no way an ex-Nazi scientist getting aroused by the prospect of nuclear annihilation is meant to be taken literally.
The women will have to be selected for their sexual characteristics.
I'm going to blow my brains out right on this program a week from today.
In Network, when a news anchor threatens to kill himself live on air, and producers try to milk his breakdown for ratings, we're not supposed to mistake this for a documentary. How about the opening of The Player, when someone pitches an idea for a sequel to The Graduate?
Mrs. Robinson has a stroke, so she can't talk.
It's going to be funny?
Yeah, it'll be funny.
With
Dark
a stroke?
and weird and funny and with a stroke.
Actually, this may have been satire in the 90s. It'll be considered a prestige film these days. So, what about...
It's Carrie.
That's a horror film, right? There's nothing amusing about a group of mean girls creating a phony Cinderella story for the school loner, just so they can drench her in pig's blood. If this was supposed to be a teen comedy, there'd be some horny young dude getting up to dirty hijinks with a warm dessert.
Drew? It's not what it looks like.
Though, if you think about it, yes, it's horrific, but it's essentially an obscenely elaborate practical joke. One that's layered with a hearty dose of dark wit. If you remember, this all started because Carrie freaked out when she got her first period. It's as if they took that menstrual blood as inspiration and poured it all over her head. And why did the Queen Bee set it all up? Because she didn't like being punished by these sexually suggestive press-ups. To get things started, she blows John Travolta. We never saw John return the favour, because for Chris, humiliating Carrie is the only way for her to truly orgasm. Which triggers Carrie to return in kind with her own volcanic, apocalyptic orgasm. You know who else has a weird relationship to orgasms? Carrie's mum.
First sin was intercourse.
I didn't see him, Mama!
First sin was intercourse. First sin was intercourse. First sin was
And
intercourse.
the first sin was intercourse.
Eve was weak.
I know God-fearing types are meant to be a bit repressed, but she takes it to a whole new level.
I can see your dirty pillows.
The film was of course directed by Brian De Palma, who likes to layer this sort of perverse humour into most of his films, whether the audience gets it or not.
I think De Palma is probably the greatest satirist of the last 20 years in cinema. I mean, his films are hysterical, biting black comedies.
As a director who was part of the counterculture New Hollywood in the era of free love, he's never been shy about portraying sex on screen, and was the perfect director to satirise the sexual repression that dominates high school social hierarchies and religious fanaticism. He has been called a lot of things: the master of the macabre, the king of the suspense set piece, the guy that ripped off Alfred Hitchcock, not once, not twice, not thrice. Really, Brian, there are other directors you could take inspiration from? Seriously? I think the reason why he's not as celebrated as his famous contemporaries like Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola is because it's hard to tell when he's being sincere. He would often work in genres people considered trash, like the horror thriller, and both conform to the genre's conventions while self-consciously parodying them. And his technical prowess is so proficient, it's like he's a high-class escort.
Let's face it, you're a whore, huh? Oh, a Park Avenue whore, but you're still a whore.
He's aware that he holds this position in film culture. In Femme Fatale, he makes it explicit, contrasting the type of film that would be celebrated at the Cannes Film Festival with his type of cinema. It's this juxtaposition between high and low art that creates the dramatic tension in his work. Even in a more somber film like Blowout, where he attempts to convey genuine heartache about America's loss of innocence after a slew of political assassinations, he still contrasts his film with a schlocky low-budget horror. That film within a film is clearly over the top. But the actual narrative isn't that much more sophisticated. The assassin is a one-dimensional psycho. He's practically Michael Myers. Like Jean-Luc Godard, De Palma is always making you aware you're watching a movie. It's as if he's saying to the audience, You won't care about serious issues unless I lure you in with horror tropes. Dressed to Kill is De Palma's purest Hitchcockian thriller, with no obvious attempts to break the fourth wall, and its box office success indicates that audiences were wrapped up in the story. But that doesn't mean that De Palma was playing it straight. Still, this isn't the Mel Brooks Hitchcock parody High Anxiety. The satire is buried under the surface, so that the film operates on multiple levels. In the Great Museum sequence, we feel the genuine sexual desperation of Kate Miller, looking to hook up with a random stranger. And it's beautifully constructed, with a visual sophistication reminiscent of the paintings that surround her. But at the same time, one of these paintings is of a gorilla, mocking Kate's animal desires, while she writes nuts for her shopping list. When she finally gets intimate in the back of a taxi, it's shot like softcore porn. And post-coitus, she immediately discovers that her partner has a venereal disease, which is written unrealistically with an exclamation mark. Still, when she leaves and rides the elevator, her sense of guilt and shame are genuinely rendered. De Palma wants to accurately portray the dangers of our unconscious desires, while slyly poking fun at sexual conservatism, way before Scream did it.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no!
De Palma has a similar approach to almost every genre he works in. His Vietnam film Casualties of War starts out with conventional war movie mechanics.
Oh, Jesus!
When the enemy is revealed, they look like an underground ant colony, which is loaded imagery considering the military napalmed the country like it was spraying pesticide.
The roaches and total fucking destruction is the only way to deal with them, man. Kill them all!
And as a means of satire, it's a more subtle version of what Paul Verhoeven would later do in Starship Troopers.
The war effort needs your effort, at work, at home, in your community.
Although that's a great film, Verhoeven's satire has the same tone throughout. The whole thing is an amped-up masquerade of jingoistic war tropes. De Palma's film is more multifaceted, and at times deeply emotional. When an enemy soldier emerges from dirt, crawling menacingly with a knife about to attack, it's an exaggerated version of the way the enemy is often portrayed in these sorts of films. But it also sets up the way these soldiers view the Vietnamese. It establishes a theme that will eventually become gut-wrenching. When a group of soldiers capture a civilian they plan to rape, unable to see her with any humanity.
Yeah, we're gonna win her heart and mind, Erickson.
And the abuse she receives serves as a metaphor for the way the American government pillaged the entire country. De Palma's anti-establishment politics were apparent in his earliest films, which were more overt satirical comedies. Is there anything the conservative right of their era would be more irate about than a film that finds humour in a bunch of hippies creating elaborate methods to dodge the Vietnam draft?
All right, where do you live, son?
Oh, I live around. See, because you gotta make him believe that you want to live around with him.
Shot on a shoestring budget and episodic in structure, Greetings doesn't have the technical brilliance of De Palma's later work. Nor does, for the most part, its sequel Hi Mum, except one sequence that ranks as one of the best in his career. It follows a militant theatre troupe who put on a show called Be Black Baby, which is designed to make white liberals feel what it's like to be black.
Be black, baby, be black. Oh!
We want to take you through the black experience, and you all know that being black means being loose.
Although it starts off farcical, eventually the white characters seem to forget they are part of a play and start to panic that the black performers are actually dangerous.
Get your hands off me!
And the shadowy, verite handheld black and white cinematography makes it visceral for the audience. At a certain point, you don't know how to respond. Is this comedy? It feels too disturbingly real. There's a brilliant, almost surreal schism at play, because the white people have had their faces painted black, so that the troupe can put them through the brutality they receive from the police.
He did it! He did it! Avon Street! Professor Weimar? Paul Weimar. A real comedian over here, Professor Weimar.
It's ambiguous exactly what point this sequence is aiming to put across. Is it that no matter how well-meaning these liberals are, deep down there's still a fear they have of the black population they can't shake? Or is it a comment on how far they are willing to go to feel down for the cause?
It was some experience.
It was a great show, great theater.
I'm going to tell all my friends they've got to come. They've all really got to come.
This is De Palma at his most radical, but racial satire would often be present in his more mainstream films.
Hey, baby! We having a party!
Oh, Jesus Christ, Sherman, we're in the middle of a goddamn war zone. You're worried about doing the right thing?
In Sisters, we see a man who has noticed a blind woman is undressing, before it switches to reveal it's part of a candid camera game show.
It's Peeping Toms!
The guests are asked whether he continued to watch her.
Both of our contestants have picked the same answer. Let's see if they're right.
They all say yes, possibly due to negative stereotypes about sexual predation.
Oh, I am sorry, Pat and Fred.
And what's the guy's prize for his involvement in this show?
And Phil, for you, good sport that you are, dining and dancing for two at Manhattan's famous African Room.
Something similar is at play in Dress to Kill, where a young woman is accosted in a New York subway by a comically aggressive gang.
Yeah, that's right. This bitch is bothering me.
What are you gonna do about it, man?
I'm gonna break her fucking ass.
Hey, why break it when we can fuck it first, huh?
Though much like the white liberals in the Be Black Baby sequence, audiences at the time may have missed the joke and just found the men genuinely frightening, as if this were a modern revamp of Birth of a Nation. It's a trope as old as the villainous Native American in westerns, which is used in Body Double as the perfect setup for an emasculated man to act out his heroic childhood fantasies of cowboys and Indians. On the subject of negative stereotypes, Scarface finds De Palma's satire at its most tricky since Be Black Baby. Tony Montana is practically the poster child for anti-immigrant rhetoric.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
The film gives him very few redeeming qualities. He isn't drawn with much depth. Al Pacino said he purposely gave him only 2 dimensions. He's all single-minded ambition, whatever the cost.
With the right woman, I could go right to the top.
America's immigrant dream is that the country was built on the idea that anyone can go over there and make it, as long as they're honest and work hard. Tony is like that dream's distorted, savage id.
This town like a great big pussy, just waiting to get fucked on.
If De Palma is a Godardian filmmaker, and this portrayal is self-conscious, what's he trying to say by making the character so one-note? In his book, Un-American Psycho, Brian De Palma and the Political Invisible, Chris Dumas suggests it's a racist caricature, heightened by the fact that this Cuban gangster is being played by an Italian-American, with an exaggerated accent.
I told you to tell him you was in a sanitarium, not sanitation.
It's as if he's doing a form of blackface. Tony is what many people in the audience might think someone from his background would be like, practically subhuman.
You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say that's the bad guy.
He's the convenient scapegoat for the country's social ills, one that the film presents as rotten to the core, with duplicitous bosses, crooked cops, shady bankers, and a government that's been in bed with the country whose drugs are flooding the streets. However, parallel to this, despite how abhorrent Tony's actions often are, De Palma also seems aware that the audience on some primal level identifies with him because of his relentless drive to have it all. He mocks this mentality with a tongue-in-cheek 80s style montage, scored by Push It to the Limit, an ironic distillation of the era's excess. We never see Tony enjoy the fruits of his labour. As soon as he's rich, he's full of disdain for everything and paranoid, in a comically exaggerated bathtub.
Who do I trust? Me!
Getting everything you want is hollow. The world is yours is just an advertising slogan, one that Tony bought into and has become trapped by. His Art Deco home is as tacky and synthetic as the clubs playing coked-out disco music. The Florida setting creates the illusion that this is a paradise, but this American dream is actually a nightmare. This wasn't the first time De Palma played on the audience's primal desires. It's practically been his MO from day one. His flagrant use of Hitchcock's grammar has often struck many as sacrilegious, because he's the most revered Hollywood director in history, with Vertigo now routinely considered the greatest American film of all time by the Sight and Sound critic poll. It was Francois Truffaut, Godard, and the rest of the Cahiers du Cinema critics turned filmmakers that first put him on that pedestal.
We said Hitchcock is a great novelist, as good as Dostoevsky.
Before he was just considered a mere entertainer, one that was so successful because he tapped into audiences' fears and dark desires. Films like Vertigo and Rear Window seem like they explore these themes in a metatextual way, because their voyeuristic aesthetic felt like a metaphor for the way we watch movies. However, it was unclear whether Hitchcock was doing this self-consciously, or if it was happenstance. Was he just expressing his own dark id through the movies? De Palma started making films after Hitchcock's work had been theorised about, and reinterprets them with that knowledge.
I like to watch. Makes you hot, doesn't it? Yeah. Makes me hot too, real hot.
If critics have taken Hitchcock's salacious material and claimed it as high art, which of course it is, in Body Double, De Palma wants to push it in the opposite direction, claiming that the voyeuristic cinema we love isn't much different to pornography. The whole time Jake Scully is following this woman and essentially perving on her, De Palma adds this ridiculous Indian following her as well, so it can seem like what he's doing is heroic. Scotty in Vertigo wants to believe he was just protecting a damsel in distress. But is that what's really going on? Hitchcock's back projection techniques are so dated at this point, when they're used in Body Double, it's so phony looking, the audience can't get lost in that fantasy. Plus that villainous Indian is always there, whose leering gaze makes Jake aware that he's just another horny guy. De Palma was frequently criticised about his obsession with sexualising women, and subjecting them to brutal violence, as if this wasn't always a core tenet of cinema.
Look out, he's right behind you! Look out! Oh my God! Oh, God!
But I think it's deeper than that. So let's return to how we started the video with Dr. Strangelove. In that film, Stanley Kubrick constantly uses sexual metaphor to suggest that even though these people at the top of government think they are basing their decisions on high intelligence, they're actually primordial beings who are driven by sex, like we all are.
I do not avoid women, Mandrake. Yeah. But I do deny them my essence.
Yes. It's as if this idea is the foundation of De Palma's satire. Whether he's portraying high school bullies, political assassins, or exploring the reasons for his government's involvement in the Vietnam War.
Erickson here don't want to ball the dink. How come? I don't know. This is chicken shit. Is that it?
It's all driven by the same thing.